Hi, hello, vanakkam, and welcome back to yet another episode on your and everyone's favorite Little Salah YouTube channel. So today, like in the last few videos, we were seeing about the checklist, about how to do or how to migrate the applications from on-prem to cloud. And we all know we do have a lot of cloud vendors who are in the market. Someone like Azure, AWS, GCP, Oracle. So nowadays, even the business wants to migrate the applications from on-prem to cloud for various reasons, and in fact, we have discussed about what the reasons are in our previous video. So here I'm coming up with the checklist. So by watching this checklist or by using this checklist, you will be able to successfully perform your migration in terms of performance testing so that you don't miss anything, and you'll be also able to manage the performance. You'll be also able to manage the or like improve the performance. That's the highlight of it. So it's not you're going to degrade, but you're going to improve, and you're going to successfully do your migration part as part of the performance testing. So I'm going to just go through all these pointers in this video today. So for more videos like this, please do subscribe to Little Slide YouTube channel. If you like this video, please do like it and share this video who are working on migration part, your colleagues, your friends, or anyone who knows, who I can share with them. So let's now move on to the video, and let's see what are all the checklists we do and what are the actions that we're going to do in this video. So the first pointer that we see here is establishing the baseline metrics for the current application performance. So we're going to identify the current performance to set a comparison baseline. So firstly, before we even migrate our application to the cloud, it's very crucial for us to understand how it is currently performing in the on-premises environment, right? That's what we call as establishing a baseline. So basically, what is a baseline is. So we will see what is a baseline, and then we will slowly find how to establish a baseline. So firstly, talking about what is a baseline. So a baseline is a set of metrics that represents the current performance state of the application. So you're going to understand what is the current performance of the application, and this includes data such as response time, the throughput, the CPU and the memory usage, the error rates and network latency. So all these metrics will help you to understand how does the application, the current performance state of the application. And then we have the why establish a baseline. So it serves, the baseline serves as a reference point. So we all know we do the baseline to have a reference point for comparing the performance before and after migration. So we're going to do a baseline. We're going to set a baseline, and we're going to use it to compare. We're going to use it as a reference point for comparing the performance before and after migration. So by establishing the baseline, it helps us to identify any discrepancies or if there are any performance degradation post migration. And also, this is more critical. So um, this establishing a baseline, it provides a benchmark to ensure that the cloud environment can handle the same or greater load without compromising performance. Yes, in fact, most of the times the business moves to cloud is because they can handle more and more load. They can handle greater load during off or on season, like on peak times, right? And we all know that. So how so far, yeah, we saw about what's a baseline, how to establish a baseline, and now we'll see is why establishing a baseline, and now we'll see how to establish the baseline metrics. So for that, the first thing is you have to identify the key transactions. This is very important. Please, you can even make a note. So you have to identify the key transactions, which is you have to focus on the critical user flows and the high impact transactions. So you have to understand it. You have to make a requirement document on that. And next, you have to create the monitor metrics where you have to capture the data on response times, the CPU, the memory usage, the error rates, and the throughput. So you have to monitor all these metrics and you have to capture these data. That is capturing data of the response times, the CPU, memory usage, the error rates, and the throughput. And next is the simulate load. So you have to conduct the load testing to understand how the system performs under normal and peak loads. That's very important, right? So we have to firstly, you have to identify the key transactions, and next you have to monitor the metrics, and thirdly, we have to simulate the load, right? So while you are simulating the load, which means you're going to conduct the load test to understand how the system performs under normal and peak loads, and then you have to keep track of all these. So that's what the next point is. So you have to document all the gathered metrics as they will be vital for post migration comparison. So the first point, right, the very first point that we're going to see is which we cover is the baseline. So you have, for any reason, you must not skip this point. You definitely have to establish the baseline metrics. So you have to identify the key transactions, you have to identify the metrics, you have to simulate the load, and you have to record the data. You have to document, you have to prepare the test report for that. So now we'll move on to the next topic, which is defining the performance goals based on the business SLAs. So now we'll move to the second pointer, which is defining the performance goals based on the SLAs, that is the service level agreements, and we have to set clear objectives to measure against post migration. So what are performance goals? I'm really sorry for taking the entire performance testing in one video, but I just want you all to understand this point. So that's the reason I'm bringing all these basic knowledge, because we have to learn, we have to understand what we're going to do as part of the checklist, right? So performance goals are specific and they are measurable objectives that define the expected system performance in the cloud. So no matter what, in the on-prem or in the cloud, but the performance goals are specific. So it has to be very specific. You must be very specific to what you need, and they have to be measurable, right? And that define the expected system performance in the cloud. So these goals, I mean, these performance goals, they are derived from the SLAs that outline the acceptable performance metrics like response times, throughput, error rates, and uptime, right? So it has all, I mean, like all these performance goals has to be derived from the SLAs. So why do we need to set the performance goals? So the first thing is we have to establish clear expectation from the cloud environment's performance. And then we have to ensure that the migrated applications meet or they exceeds the performance standard of the on-prem. So that's the second point. So that's the reason we have to set the performance goal. So the first thing is we have to set a clear expectation for the performance. The second point is you have to ensure that the migrated application meets or exceeds the performance standards of the on-prem application. And thirdly, you have to quantify the acceptable performance thresholds for critical transactions and business processes. So overall, why do we set the performance goals is to set the expectation, to ensure the performance standards, to quantify the acceptable performance threshold. So all these 3 points are more required for setting up the performance goals. So why? I mean, like, how do we define the performance goals? So I told you, like, we have to have the SLAs, right? So how to identify the SLA metrics? So the first thing is you have to pinpoint the KPIs, that is key performance indicators, like the response times, which is like for example the response time of the applications, the response time of the key transactions should be less than 2 seconds, and the error rate should be less than 1%, and the throughput should be like 1,000 requests per minute or like 1,000 requests per second. So this is how you have to identify your SLA metrics. So once you have identified the SLA metrics, they should be aligned with the business priorities. So you have to prioritize high impact areas like payment processing or user login, and you have to set the thresholds. So you have to establish any acceptable and optimal thresholds for each metric. For example, the response times must be less than 2 seconds under normal load and less than 5 seconds under peak load. So that is how you have to set the thresholds for setting up your performance goals. And you have to include any contingency plan. So you have to define acceptable recovery time in case of failures or any spikes in traffic. So now we'll move on to the next part, which is identifying the infrastructure dependencies and potential bottlenecks. So this is very important in terms of migration, because when you migrate, the infrastructure completely changes and the dependencies also will change. So we'll see how to do that in this next few seconds. So the third pointer, which is the infrastructure dependency. So identifying, I mean, like, this is another most critical part, which is again an essential step in the cloud migration, which is identifying the infrastructure dependencies and potential bottlenecks. So think of it like you're inspecting a car before a long road trip. So you need to know what could break down before you hit the road, right? So same way, what do we mean by infrastructure dependencies? Basically, there are all, these are all the components the application relies on, from servers and databases to external APIs and storage systems. So identifying these is very crucial because missing just one dependency could mean serious disruptions post migration. So you won't feel it now, but you will feel the disruption post migration. So that's the reason you must understand the infrastructure, you must understand the dependencies. So why this step is critical? Okay, so why bother identifying these dependencies and bottlenecks? So imagine you migrate everything to the cloud, but your database is not optimized for the cloud environment, and suddenly the response times spikes, they go like skyrocket, and your application starts lagging. So identifying these components upfront help you to mitigate such risks. So that's why I told you this step is very critical. You have to identify the infrastructure dependencies. So the steps to identify the dependencies and bottlenecks are: you have to create a dependency map. If you haven't done previously, you can try now. You have to create a dependency map. In fact, I'll show you how to create a dependency map in the next video. So you have to list every single component your application interacts with, from database to authentication services. So this map will be your blueprint for identifying any potential issues. So for that, you need to create a dependency map. And then you have to assess the cloud compatibility. So you have to check each component for cloud compatibility. So will your current database structure work in the cloud, or does it need to be reconfigured? So this is where you identify the components that need upgrading or replacing, right? So that's why you have to assess the cloud compatibility. So that's very important because you're going to migrate your application. So you must for sure definitely have to do the cloud compatibility. And then the next thing is you have to analyze the network dependency. So you look at your network connections. Are there any latency issues, or is the current bandwidth sufficient for cloud-based operations? So this helps you to prevent, or this helps the application to prevent slow data transfer and connectivity issues. So that's the reason you have to analyze the network dependencies, and then you have to evaluate the database performance. So next thing is like you have to assess your databases, because for any application the heart of the application is the database, right? So you have to check for query performance, you have to do data transfer limiting, you have to check for like potential scalability issue that could become bottleneck in the cloud. And then finally you have to monitor the resource utilization, because monitoring CPU, memory and disk usage for each component is very critical, because this step, that is monitoring the resource utilization, will help you to identify the resource heavy components that could slow down the application post migration. And now we'll move on to the next part, which is choosing the cloud ready testing tools for distributed load generation. So if you're moving to the cloud, we need tools that can handle dynamic multi-region traffic, and that's exactly what we're going to cover now. So what do we mean by cloud ready testing tools? So these are the tools that are designed to simulate user traffic across multiple locations in the cloud, because they help you, or they help us to assess how our application performs under varied traffic patterns and ensure it can handle spikes without breaking down. And next we'll see why distributed load generation. So just I'm separating this into two half. Like firstly, it's cloud ready testing tools, and the second half is the distributed load generation. So why not just use your old testing tools that you have used already with the on-prem? So because cloud environments are different. Yes, they're completely different. And since we need to test how the applications handle traffic from different geographic locations simultaneously, because we all know they'll be like delivering from different networks or different regions. Like we do use multiple CDNs, we'll be using multiple app gateways. So they are going to be residing in different geographic locations, right? So distributed load generation help us to ensure that our application performs well under realistic cloud-based scenarios. So how are we going to choose the right testing tools? Yeah, so far we have seen like we have to choose right cloud ready testing tools, and that has to handle the distributed load generation. But how are we going to choose it? Firstly, check if the tool can generate load from multiple regions, and this is the key to simulate realistic user traffic across different geographies. And next, check for integration capabilities. So you have to look for tools that integrate seamlessly with CI/CD pipelines and monitoring tools like AWS CloudWatch or Azure App Insights or Azure Any Monitoring. And this allows you to track performance data in real time. And nextly, you have to evaluate the reporting and analytics. So you need insights, not just raw data, but you have to choose tools that provide detailed performance reports where we have to identify the potential bottlenecks and failure points. And nextly, the major thing, that is the cost efficiency. Cloud testing can get expensive if it is not managed properly. So you have to compare the pricing models. You have to choose pay as you go or subscription to find the best fit for your testing needs. And then you have to review the cloud native features, which is you have to prioritize the tools with cloud native features like K6, Neoload, JMeter on AWS. So because these are optimized for cloud environments and can handle large scale distributed testing very effectively. And next we're going to see how to identify like what is identifying key business transactions to prioritize in testing, where we're going to focus on critical user journeys and transactions. And now we'll quickly see about identifying the key business transactions. Uh, we have to identify the key business transactions as a priority. And why is this important is because not every transaction is equally important and we are missing out on a critical workflow, and that could spell disaster post migration. So what do we mean by key business transactions? So think of these as the essential user interactions that drive revenue, or they have a direct impact on the user experience. So we are talking about things like login process, payment gateways, product searches, the kind of stuff that it fails, but that could cost a lot for the customers. So they are the key business transactions. So now you know what is a key business transaction. That is login process, payment gateways, product searches, and any kind of stuff that if it fails will cost the customers. So why should we prioritize certain transactions? So imagine you migrate your application to the cloud and suddenly the payment processing feature is taking 10 seconds instead of 2 seconds. If that's a critical business transaction and you did not test it thoroughly, you are in trouble. That's why prioritizing these transactions ensure that the most important workflows remain stable and efficient. So how are you going to analyze the business process? So you have to start by identifying the core functions that generate revenue, or they have to be like integral to the user satisfaction, like product search, order placement, and account management. Now you have to review the user journey. So you have to map out typical user path. You have to check like how do the users interact with the system from login to checkout. Also have to consider edge cases like password resets or failed transactions. So all these has to be part of your user journey. That is so now you're currently identifying and prioritizing the transactions. And now you have to consult the stakeholders. You have to talk to the product owners, the developers, and the support teams to pinpoint high priority transactions that could impact the business if they fail. And now uh, you did all these. So now you have to examine the historical data, where you have to check out the analytics and you have to find what are the top 5 most assessed features. So which workflows generate the most traffic or revenue, because this data can be a gold mine for identifying the critical transactions. And then you have to apply the risk based testing. You have to assign priority based on impact, complexity, and likelihood of failure. A low impact feature with a low traffic can take a backseat because there are other high impact, high traffic transactions that are waiting, so they have to be given priority. So you have to apply risk based testing. That's very important, please to remember, because everyone will be asking you, everyone will be like running behind you, asking like, what are you going to test and why are you testing this particular user journey? It's because you are going to test based on the risk based testing. And nextly, finally, for this day one, we're going to see the last step of the pre-migration preparation. In fact, we're going to see much more other topics tomorrow. But for now, we're going to complete it. We're going to end with this developing rollback plans. And this is very important before you even complete your first step of your checklist, that is pre-migration preparation. So if you are not aware of the rollback plans, you must definitely understand. You must definitely learn rollback plans from today, because you have to develop rollback plans for any potential performance regression. Imagine you have just completed the migration, but the application is crashing under load. What next? Or what now? That's where the rollback plans come in, and that's what we are covering today. So you have to understand the rollback plans. So what are rollback plans? So simply putting, they are your safety net during migration. If things go wrong, like a sudden spike in response time or data loss, a rollback plan ensures you can restore the previous state without missing a beat. So why rollback plans are essential? It's because, let's say your application is live in the cloud and user transactions are failing left and right, and without a rollback plan, you are left scrambling to fix things while users are frustrated. So a well thought out rollback plan lets you revert to the previous stable state. You can investigate the issue and regroup without causing chaos. So what are the steps to develop rollback plan? So far we saw about what is rollback plan and how is it going to save us. But what are the steps to prepare that? Please do note it down. The first step is defining the reversion points. You have to identify the key stages where the rollback checkpoints will be created, like after the database migration or major application updates. So this way you know exactly where to revert if the issue arises. And nextly, document rollback procedures. You have to document all these, like you have to outline every step for executing the rollback. You have to include the data restoration, application redeployment, and configuration revision, because this documentation will serve as the blueprint during the rollback. And then you have to validate the data integrity, because before initiating any rollback you have to verify that all data backups are intact and accessible, because this step is crucial to avoid data loss during the reversion process. And nextly, you have to assign roles and responsibilities, because you have to make sure everyone knows their role. Everyone is assigned a specific task: data restoration to the database admin, network configuration to the system admin, and user communication to the support team. And finally, the test rollback scenarios, because you have to practice the rollback scenarios. You have to conduct simulated rollbacks to confirm that the procedures work smoothly without causing further issues. And that's it for today. Developing rollback plan is having like a safety parachute. You hope you won't need it, but if you do, it's really a life saver. So if this video helped you understand how to handle the migration from on-prem to cloud, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more practical and cloud migration insights. And next time we'll dive into the key performance test to execute. That's going to be our next topic, and we're going to see much more. We're going to see the critical metrics to monitoring, post-migration validation, tools and best practices in our next video, in our next day. So we'll dive into those topics tomorrow to confirm that the cloud environment is performing as expected. And thank you for watching, and see you all soon. Take care and bye-bye.